Hey guys, Trevor Alexander here with Burn Saddlery. Now I get asked a lot about antiquing. What to use as far as a resist, how heavy to put the antique on. Well, in today's class we're going to go over all those things. I'm going to show you guys what I use, what the steps are that I take, and hopefully by the end of it you guys can also have an awesome antiqued project. So let's go ahead and get ready for antiquing. So when we antique leather, it makes the deco cuts, all the shaded areas, it's going to make those pop a lot more. It's going to bring a lot more contrast and a lot more visual appeal to your project. So anytime you want your stamping / carving to like really pop, then you're going to want to antique it. All right, so before you antique something, you're going to want to make sure that you've already got whatever oils, conditioners, whatever you want already in the leather. For this particular project, I'm not oiling it, which is also an acceptable finish for, stuff that's not going to have a lot of use. So the first thing that we're going to do for antiquing is put a resist on. Now the resist just makes it so the antique doesn't smear across the whole project and get everything dark. It's just going to make sure all the dark parts need to stay dark, like all of your recessed places will stay dark, but everything that's on the surface, the resist will help the antique just wipe off of that so that it doesn't really discolor it. So for today, we're going to use this Mohawk Classical Instrument Lacquer. This stuff's awesome. I use it on everything. You could use Resin, you could use Pro Resist, but this stuff is the stuff that I absolutely love. All right, so let's get right into the antiquing process. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our lacquer, pop it open. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area with this stuff. It's pretty potent. And then whenever I have any scrap sheepskin, I cut it into these little rectangles, and this is what I'm going to use for antiquing. So I'm going to go ahead, clean off any fuzzies, just kind of pull them out. And then we want to go really light coats, but make sure it's completely covered. You don't want anything that's not covered. So we're just going to start here. Just a nice light coat. Rub it in fairly quick so it's not globbing up anywhere or getting really thick in spots. Now I like to do 2 coats of resist just to make sure that I got everything. So when you're working on a project like this that has a tooled piece and a not tooled piece, you want to just make sure that you're consistent across the board. Just antique everything the same. Just do all the parts the same, or else you're going to have inconsistencies in your projects. So we got that. Okay, so now that we got our first coat of resist on, we're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and do another light coat of resist. The first coat's set for about 5 minutes, so let's go ahead and get our second coat on. Again, we're just going nice light coat, kind of rubbing it in quick so that it doesn't goop up or have really heavy spots. This coat will go on a little bit lighter since it's not trying to soak into the leather as much. Now I'm antiquing this before I sew it, so that I can have the nice contrast of the white threads. Anytime I can sew after I antique, I do, just because I really like that nice contrast from white threads. I don't love the look of dark threads or antiqued threads. You might, that's a personal opinion, so if that's what you like. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and let this second coat set up for another 5 minutes, and then we'll get into applying the antiquing paste. All right, now that our resist is set up, we're gonna go ahead and apply our antiquing paste. So I'm gonna roll my sleeves up, get on some gloves so this doesn't get everywhere on me. Take a fresh sheepskin. I'm gonna load this up pretty heavy and just start smearing it on there. Now there's all sorts of colors of antique. My favorites are medium brown, dark brown, and black. For today's project, we're going to be using medium brown antique, tool little pieces of leather, antique them with different colors, and then for your customers, they'd have that visual option to see, okay, I want this color of antique, and you can easily replicate that. I'm really going to work that antiquing paste into all of the cracks, make sure that nothing's left out. If you're doing a bigger piece of leather, I'd try to work in like maybe 2-foot sections, antique a little bit at a time. That way the antique doesn't have any time to dry. Because if your antique dries, it can make things a little more challenging. Now that everything's rubbed in there really good, I'm going to take another sheepskin and I'm just going to wipe off all of the excess. I'm kind of going to be wiping it down pretty good, trying to get all of the excess off, make sure there's nothing, no globby spots left over. Okay, now everything's really starting to pop, starting to get a good feel for what the end product's going to look like. Okay, now I'm going to switch gloves because I've got a little bit of antique on both of these and I want it to start cleaning up a little bit more. So I'm going to put some new fresh gloves on. Probably only going to do one. And I'm going to buff it one more time. Making sure to get all of the excess off of it. Now we don't have to go quite as heavy on this. There's not any cracks to fill, obviously. So we're just gonna put a nice even coat of the paste on this, wipe it off. It's not gonna change the color much, but it will change the color just a little bit. So we're just gonna come across it. Okay, now I'm going to wipe it off. Get a cleaner one. You can see if you work kind of quickly with your antique, you don't get any streaks from your antique setting up too long, and you just get a nice clean finish. Now if you have any streaky spots, at this point you can use something like bag coat, tan coat, possibly even like a resin, and just a light coat of that to buff everything off. But at this point everything looks really clean, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm just going to go on to what I like for the final step, and that's just leather sheen. It's a personal preference. Use whatever you like for a finishing thing. Just make sure that it's not going to cut the antique. It's going to darken your leather a little bit. Just kind of brings a little bit of life out of your leather, which is nice. So I'm just going to put a couple coats of this on there. Okay, done one coat. I'm gonna let that sit for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna come up with another coat, and we're probably gonna do 3 or 4 coats of this spray sheen. All right, now that we have our leather sheen on there, good amount of coats, everything looks really nice. Now is when I would go ahead and finish my project that I was doing the antiquing for. And the reason for that is just so that I have nice clean white stitches and we're not antiquing over the stitches. That's my personal preference on that. If you like having antiqued stitches, then this would be a step that you'd do later on after your project's all put together. But for me personally, I like having nice clean stitches. So now that's all done, I'm glad you took the class. Thanks for watching, and we'll hope to see you on the next one.